Hey everybody, welcome back to Writer Groupie. Yeah, I'm back with part 2 of my daily writing tips and misconceptions. And I think about where I ended last time was all about does practice make perfect, and if it does, why do sometimes we feel like it's not perfect? Coming up next on Writer Groupie. Okay, you guys, so let's think about it. Practice makes perfect. We're writing every day. We're getting in the writing chair. We're sacrificing something else in our life in order to be able to do this. But sometimes, even though we might do it daily or regularly, we don't always feel like it's perfect. We get self-sabotage going on and imposter syndrome going on. Well, I'm here to tell you that that is a very common problem amongst authors. We just cannot, for some reason, understand that even though we are working at our craft and putting all of our energy into it and trying to make it perfect, sometimes it just isn't. And I think it has to do with experience. If you're a new writer and you've just begun your first book, please don't do this to yourself. It's just so unnecessary. As I lift my cup to you, because you are trying. You're putting in the time. You're really, really putting in the effort and the time to be good at what you do. You're studying craft books. You've purchased some software that's helping you to make the text as perfect as possible. But the problem is sometimes when you're telling a story, you just got to be a storyteller. I think the story is the most important thing. You're telling a story. You're trying to entertain someone. Now, I'm talking about fiction, obviously. If you're a nonfiction or a narrative nonfiction sort of writer, then you can disregard what I'm saying. You can focus more on craft. But for those of us who write fiction, it is so much more important to get the story out. Tell the story and then worry about the editing of it in another draft. You don't have to do it all in the first draft. Remember that. You know, writing really is like a muscle. If you look at yourself as an active writer, like you would be in the gym working a specific muscle group, perhaps it's your arms, perhaps you're working your arms at the gym. It takes time for you to see the efforts. Now, you might feel your effort right away. By the next day, you could be so sore you can't lift your arm. But you know what? It's going to be some time before you see that definition and that muscle appear that you've been working to get for so long. It is much the same with writing. It just takes time. You're not going to be perfect first time out of the fingertips. That just doesn't happen, unfortunately. And I hate to admit that because, believe me, I'm the kind of writer who wants perfection the first time out. But rarely ever do we see that. Don't worry about it. It's normal. And remember, Rome was not built in a day. Now, I know that's an old adage, but it's very true. It took 1,229 years to build Rome. But remember, they were laying the bricks every single day. That 1,229 years that it took to build it had to have something done on a daily basis in order for it to finally reach completion. So don't forget that. And don't worry if you're not able to do something like you would like to do. Just do a little bit. Just a little bit. You know, even small amounts will amount to a lot at the end of a year. You don't have to be in a rush. Do the best you can with the time that you have. To me, that is far, far more important than rushing through the work and doing something halfway. I mean, who wants to read a half-done book? Nobody. And that's why a lot of people are returning books today, because people rushed them. Don't do that. And then again, if you think about it, people who write steadily every day for 2 weeks and feel that they've accomplished something are generally the ones who suffer from imposter syndrome when they see somebody else turning out 2 books in a year. They suffer from, oh my gosh, look at what all they've done. They've done so much and I haven't. They suffer from these guilty things because they didn't do something. So this is a fine line, as you can well tell from these two different videos that I've produced, that daily practice in writing is important. It's important to try and do something, as often as possible. Now, like I said before, you don't have to do it every day. You don't. You don't have to do it every day. But maybe 3 times a week, you sit in that writing chair and you actually dig in and get some stuff done. And I'm just throwing 3 weeks or 2 weeks or 3 times a week and those kinds of things out there as just general numbers. You know what it's like for you. You know what works for you. And that's the most important thing, is do what works for you. If you can only devote 3 days a week and maybe only an hour a day in those 3 days, 3 hours a week, I promise you that using that time will benefit you far more than doing nothing at all. You can't always be writing, but you can always be plotting. You can always be thinking about the story. You can always be writing down snippets of things that you want to incorporate later. For me, being a writer is not always sitting in the writing chair. Sometimes it's actually just staring off into space, seated in a comfortable position outside in the sunlight, thinking about the story. And if that sounds like you, you're still a writer. Well, it occurred to me that I might have been holding my phone the wrong way for the videos that I shot yesterday. Let me just say, this second video, this daily writing tips and misconceptions video, is taking way longer than it should. So if you see me dressed in other clothing and, different things, then just know that I've done this over a period of days. Sometimes being a writer has to fall second. Sometimes you're writing practice. Sometimes you're work in progress. Sometimes it just takes more time to do than you have in a day or a week. Shooting video is much the same way, as I am discovering this week. Anyway, you guys don't worry about it. I got you covered, and we're going to talk about things to do to help along the way in your daily practice. Now, I have a very, very short period of time to try and give you some pointers about a daily practice. So I may kind of start bullet pointing this for you. Here we go. Okay, so let's talk about why we decided to become a writer. Having a daily writing practice, it goes back to that, really. Why were we going to decide to have a writing practice? Why were we doing this daily thing? Well, in my opinion, the best reason is to develop your skill. You really decided, I want to try this out. I want to try writing something to see if I can do it. It was to develop yourself in some way, to see if you are a writer. And maybe some of us put pen to pencil or a pen to paper or pencil to paper or fingers to keyboard just to say, I'm a writer. And sometimes we take that writing and put it before other people to get them to say, you are a writer. And there's nothing wrong with that. But once we've established why we started doing this, it may become a little bit easier to do it more often. Also, I take writing seriously because I've done this for a very long time. And I kind of see writing as a journey. You start out and you got little baby steps, and then you get a little bit more bold, and then you do a little bit more, and eventually you have a full-length novel or a finished short story or whatever your goal was. And then the journey intensifies. The road gets broader, the heat gets more intense on your head, whatever. I'm using the journey analogy because you won't reach the end of your journey unless you are taking steps. You have to be moving forward in some manner in order to finish the journey. And for most of us, it's a never-ending journey. But there are milestones. You do get to a point where you're saying, I am progressing on my journey. And that's a very, very good thing. And also, if you think about milestones as being exciting way stops, like when you get halfway through a novel like I am right now. I'm halfway through a novel, and it's kind of exciting because when you're halfway, you're like, man, I'm halfway. Or perhaps you've reached the end of a poem that you've been working on, or perhaps you finished the short story. Whatever your milestones are, really enjoy that. Be excited about it. Celebrate it, because those kinds of happy, positive energies that you put into this daily writing practice, or whatever you want to call it, this journey, will encourage you to keep going. If you really think about it, we like being rewarded for our efforts in just about every facet of life. Writing is no different. So let's recap. Daily writing does not have to be daily. It can be weekly, it can be monthly, it can be whatever you can afford to do with your time. But the better and more often that you do put in the time, the better and the more exciting the journey becomes, and the better you get at it. You can't be any kind of professional anything if you don't practice and you don't put in the time necessary to apprentice properly. And so I think a daily writing practice is a good thing. Do I always write every day? No, I do not. Do I believe that the milestones that we achieve are magnificent and encourage me to get back into the writing chair? Yes, I do. And that is what I'm going to leave you with this time, is try it. Try it. Even if it's only 10 minutes, just try to get in the writing chair every day if you can, or once a week. Pick a routine for yourself. Get in the writing chair and go to it. And let me know what your journey looks like. I'd love to hear it. That's it for me, you guys. Until next time, come on back to Writer Groupie. Everybody like and subscribe. I'd love to have you.